It's been really great working with you, Dr. Joseph. So Dr. Joseph has an extensive career as an educator in the California Bay Area. Her commitment to education includes work developing and supporting programs in schools and organizations like MESA, Mathematics, Engineering, Science Achievement, Girls Incorporated, Black Girls Code, and the Krause Center for Innovation. She has spent the past 8 years developing computer science programs and recently developed a curriculum for a mobile app programming book for kids. Dr. Joseph currently works as the Director of Learning, Innovation, and Design in the middle school at the Harker School in San Jose, California. She is a member of the inaugural cohort 2019 to 2020 of the Computer Science Teachers Association Equity Fellows and serves as an MIT Master Trainer for App Inventor. Beyond teaching, making, and the arts, her current passion is edstoria.com and uncovering ways to help teachers not vanish from the educational landscape. She tweets at Dr. Joseph, Abigail Joseph, and she holds a BSE in computer science from Princeton University and has an MS and Ph.D. in computer science from the University of California at Santa Cruz. So I will pass it on to Dr. Joseph.
Thank you so much. I am going to thank you for that beautiful introduction. I'm going to share my screen. And so my thought is to share with you the first 25, 30 minutes or so, my journey and my many career discoveries, and then have some Q&A at the end, which I'm looking forward to. All right, so today I want to share with you my discovery. I'm calling it Discovery X because I currently actually lead a program at my middle school called Discovery X, where our students are able to, where we guide our students to figure out their passions through various learning journeys that they want to take outside of their academic classes. And so as I was thinking about sharing my career paths with you, I was thinking about it as actually a Discovery X, a journey of many passions, because I have, as you will see along the way, pivoted and shifted in terms of how the things that I want to do and learn about in my career. So as Ariel told you, I currently work in San Jose, California, at an independent school, TK through 12 of about 2,000 students, where I work on our middle school campus as the Director of Learning, Innovation, and Design, working with our educators, our teachers, to do innovative things in their classroom, which can incorporate technology. I work and run a makerspace on our campus, as well as various pedagogical advances into their curriculum. So that's my kind of day career side. My passion career side is I am now, I will, at the end, I'll share with you some of the things that I'm working on in terms of entrepreneurship, but branding myself as an innovation doctor and what that means, I'm still figuring out, but that's one of my many journeys career-wise. And I served as a Computer Science Teachers Association Equity Fellow, looking at ways to provide access and equity to computer science education. And I'll talk a bit about that. And as part of having become one of those equity fellows, I was asked to sit on the CSTA board. So now I sit as a board member of the Computer Science Teachers Association board. And as Ariel said, I have one of my passion projects on the side has been Edstoria, which is basically been trying to provide spaces for educators to come together as community and become more creative people so that they are more creative in their classrooms. So I'm going to start from my beginnings, where I'm from. where Professor Thompson will be familiar with some of these people in my life. So my journey begins with my parents. They were both immigrants from Trinidad and Tobago. They immigrated from the warm, sunny tropics to the dead winter in Montreal, Canada. I'm not sure how they did that, but they were able to do that. And it is in Canada where me and my brother were both born in Toronto, Canada. And my father was a man of many trades. He was a police officer in the Caribbean. He then, oh, Natasha, we'll have to talk about that. And he was a construction worker. And then when my parents immigrated to New Jersey, so that is where I grew up in New Jersey, he studied to be an electrical engineer and then started to work at Bell Laboratories, where he was an electrical engineer, and then later on worked in human resources and university relations and got to travel and work with college students all over the country to recruit them to Bell Laboratories. And my mother, she was a nurse by trade. So I had some examples of science and engineering in my life. And my brother, who was 4 years older than me, pursued a computer engineering degree as well. So I did have some mentors in my eyes. And as a child, oops, lost my mouse for a moment. There we go. So little me was always a curious little one, just thinking about her world and trying to figure out how things worked and not worked. So it was only a matter of time before I started exploring and discovering engineering and computer science. So how did I have my first discoveries of engineering computer science were actually through a program that Bell Laboratories had in the 80s, which was a summer science program in which they developed it to increase the number of marginalized audiences in engineering and science. And I was fortunate enough that my dad worked there, got me into this program. And that was actually the program that launched me to decide to study computer science when I went to college. So my first discoveries were in this summer science program, as you can see. Its objectives at the bottom of that folder, which was to create scientific and career interest, provide technical environment exposure, and learning experiences in engineering. And that's me as a 8th grader. And I participated in several programs during my summer years as a middle schooler and as a high schooler, which got me introduced into engineering and computer science in a number of ways. And this was my very first exposure. And I would say this is like the thing that really I go back to every time I think about building my career, was this exposure to learning about circuits and learning how to solder and building an alarm clock from scratch. And these were the things that got me curious and excited about potentially studying engineering and computer science. And during high school, I had some opportunities. One of the summers that I worked with some employees at Bell Labs, they put the C programming book in front of me, and that is how I fell in love with computer science. And so that's how I became interested in computer science. And that moved me into college, where I continued to do internships at Bell Labs, but fell in love with computer science a little more deeply. So I'll just share a little bit about my college discoveries as it leads to my where I am now. So I attended Princeton University studying as a Bachelor of Science in engineering, in computer science. And it was an experience like no other. On the left, the black and white picture is just my particular residential college, but you can see there aren't that many brown spots in that picture. So that was like my academic year, I say reality. And then in the summers, I would go and intern and be a part of these Bell Labs summer programs where I got to interact with more people that looked like me who were learning and trying to pursue engineering and computer science in their colleges and universities. So having that support was definitely a good part of me getting through my career. And so some facts. So I graduated from Princeton in 1995. And the programs that really helped me get through this experience were the National Society of Black Engineers, the Society of Women Engineers, and art. So one thing that I did not share with you is that I have a large passion for art, photography, and every semester while I was in undergraduate, I was always pursuing some type of art class, whether it be a studio class, painting or drawing, or art appreciation, art history. And that was the thing that kind of propelled me through my undergraduate experience. So I've always lived in this kind of duality world of my love of art and the practicality of wanting to do something, pursue a computer science degree. And so when I was pondering graduate school, which I only pondered because of a mentor I had for many summers when I was interning at Bell Labs, I knew that I wanted to do something that that tied both computer science and my art world together. And so I ended up going to grad school at the University of California, where I studied computer graphics. And at that time, I worked, my thesis was in an area called sonification, which was basically visualizing data. Instead of visualizing it graphically, adding a layer of sound to be able to understand complex data sets. And so this was the system that I had developed. That area of sonification had just been developing. And so the sounds that people were using were pitch sounds and volume control, but sounds that weren't necessarily a series of beeps, something that one could probably not listen to over a long period of time. And so my thesis was about trying to make these sound data sets sound pleasing to the ear so that one could potentially listen to all of these, this additional information about a data set over a long period of time, making that musical. So I finished my master's in '98. And these were just some statistics I got from population site, just so you have an awareness of the challenges I was facing at that time. And then continued to finish my doctorate in 2002. And when I finished my doctorate, I was poised with the question, what do I do when I grow up? And I had, during grad school, I had did a lot of tutoring and summer programs for the local community college MESA program, Mathematics, Engineering, Science Achievement, which was a California community college program designed to help marginalized audiences transfer to four-year universities in math, engineering, and science. And so I had that little education bug and decided that I was going to pursue education because working in industry wasn't calling me at that time. And in 2002 is an interesting year because that was one of the many tech bust at the time. So I had actually started my education discoveries looking to work as an adjunct professor at the local community college. But people weren't taking computer. It seems like a really far off concept. No one was interested in computer science because the industry at that time had been tanking a little bit. So I ended up teaching a little bit of everywhere and a little bit to everyone, exploring after school programs, summer programs, working at the community college level in a variety of ways. So I did a lot with the MESA program, as I mentioned, working with community college students to keep them, mentor them, and keep them engaged on their road to becoming engineers and mathematicians and scientists. I worked with various college preparation programs with marginalized communities, helping to engage high school students into engineering and computer science, and with a variety of other after school programs with students who probably wouldn't have seen a brown or Black person who was interested in engineering or technology, and mentoring them. And at that point, and this is another high school program that I was a faculty advisor for. At the end of that long stint, I spent some time working at Girls Incorporated, working as their computer cluster coordinator, developing programs for young girls with technology. And after a short stint there, I got my first teaching job in the K-12 sphere. I had fell in love with middle school and had decided that middle school was the age group I wanted to work with, because in my time working with all these students, middle school was a time where girls started to make the decisions about what they were capable of doing or not capable of doing. And I wanted to be in the place where those students were getting the messages that they could pursue engineering and computer science if that was something they wanted to, that they had that choice. And so that's how I landed at wanting to work with middle school. So that leads me to my career discoveries, which is fraught with a lot of different things. As a volunteer, working in independent schools, thought leader in the area of computer science education, and a little dabble in entrepreneurship. So as Ariel said in the intro, I have been teaching in the California Bay Area since 2005, so almost 20 years now, and all primarily in middle school. And when I first started, I was mostly a technology teacher. So really teaching things like Word and PowerPoint, maybe doing some computer science electives because that was my background, and I had that knowledge, but mostly using tech tools. And then I would say about 8 or 9 years ago, schools started to really realize that computer science was something that their students needed to have. And I don't think, because of where I am in the Bay Area, in the heart of Silicon Valley, the schools here may have jumped on it a little bit earlier than other places, just because of the parent populations working in these schools, wanting their children to have access to this knowledge. And so I spent quite a number of years at several schools starting computer science programs for middle school students. And so you can see some of that has to do, some of it was visual block-based languages, some of it text-based programming languages. At the beginnings, it was all about, well, what language is the school teaching? And now it's very much so more than about language. It's really about the computational thinking skills that we are trying to get into the hands of our students. So the collaboration, the extraction, the decomposition, all these computational thinking types of skills versus actual just thinking about being language agnostic per se. So during my time as a teacher, I also did a lot of volunteer slash work. Some of that was with, I spent a couple years working with Black Girls Code when they were just in their beginnings, creating various workshops and programs for the girls that participated in that program. And then I spent a great 3 or 4 years working as a master trainer for MIT App Inventor, which is a visual-based language that lets you do mobile applications. And in the process of that, for 4 years, MIT had partnered with Verizon Foundation to do this challenge for middle school and high school students. And the winners of these challenge got a master trainer to come to their school, train them in App Inventor, and help them bring their mobile app idea to life. And this picture at the very bottom is a team that's near and dear to my heart. It was the first team that I worked with, but a team of 6 Latina girls from a very, very, when I say small town, a very small town in Texas near the borderlines of Texas of about 5,000 people. Many of them had barely used a lot of technology. And their idea was to create an app to help this student in their class who is visually impaired better navigate his school. And that experience led them, just because of their story, led them to presenting their app at the White House science fair and meeting the president, which I did not get to tag along, which would have been great. But in my heart, I can say that I planted the seeds that helped to boost their self-esteem and know that technology was something that they could pursue. So that those are the kind of things, stories that I got to be a part of and working with these various organizations over the course of my time as an educator. And over that course of time, I started with working with students and have developed now this passion for working with educators and helping them to get comfortable with technology, design thinking, makerspacery types of things, and empowering them as students to really feel comfortable so that they are able in turn to bring that to their students in the classroom. So these pictures are just from various summer institutes or workshops that I've done with a variety of educators or meetups that we've had over the course of time. So over these past, I would say 6 or 7 years, I've done a lot of stuff with education of educators as well. And so about 4 years ago, I was at a crossroads. I think, as many educators do, teaching in the K-12 arena is really hard work. And I was pondering what I should do with myself. And I ended up, because I was actually in position as a specialty teacher one who teaches technology or computer scientist, I would be teaching 150 to 200 students a week in 1 to week classes. And over time, that kind of wears on you because you don't get the benefits of being a classroom teacher that they see on a regular basis. So at one point, I took a year off, which I'm calling a teacher sabbatical year. And I spent my time in a makerspace, and it was the best year of my life because I got to re-tap into my creativity. And I learned about laser cutting and 3D printing and vinyl printing. And so over here are some of the projects that I worked on in the local community college makerspace over the course of that year. And I also was tapped with my expertise as a MIT master trainer to be a technical reviewer of this Learn to Program with App Inventor book with the author. So I reviewed her book as well as created some supplemental materials for teachers to be able to utilize this book in their classroom. Let's see. What's next? All right, so during that teacher sabbatical year, this is a big year for thinking. I started to, before that a little bit, work with a teacher that I had worked with at a prior school, thinking about what it is we could do potentially as entrepreneurs to help develop and strengthen teachers' wellness and health so that teachers weren't burning out and dropping out as they do probably in their first 3 to 5 years of teaching. A K-12 teacher just says, forget it, I'm done, it's too much. And so Edstoria was born, where I have been working on ways to develop teachers' passions around creativity and joy and community, so that maybe in turn that would keep them in the profession. It's something that I know I needed and didn't get a lot of as a person who is a career computer scientist and has a background in many different things. One thing that I think really always makes me sad, a little bit sad about being an educator, is that I never get to, all of the cool things I teach my students, I never get to practice myself. So I teach, but I don't do. And so this Edstoria, building of Edstoria, was my way of getting myself to be able to do and play around with all these cool things that I was helping to teach educators to do in the classroom, as well as teaching my students. So that had to do with whether that's conversations around creativity and play and how teachers were being creative and played, or hosting challenges online for educators to think about their creativity and develop them as innovators in their lives so that they could become more innovative in their classrooms. And then that leads me to my final few discoveries. And this one I want to talk a little bit more about is becoming a CSTA Equity Fellow has been an amazing journey for me in my career path. So the Computer Science Teachers Association 2 years ago decided that they really needed to figure out how to do more with equity and access to computer science education. So they came up with this fellowship, which I applied to. 127 people applied and 10 people became part of their inaugural cohort. And so you'll see this is us. The first cohort of teachers, and through the year of we started in person in Chicago. We had our one convening in Chicago, and then COVID hit, and we continued the rest of it virtually online. But it has been 10 educators in my cohort from around the nation, all poised to disrupt education and really figure out how to make computer science education more accessible to marginalized communities, and make it more equitable as they're being taught in their classrooms. And that experience has led us to lead to interact with various thought leaders in this field of computer science education, which has been marvelous. And my project for this fellowship was to think about my stance on computer science education is this, that we are not going to be able to have enough experts who are developed in computer science to teach computer science to our children. That is never going to happen. So I see it as the access as being the gateway to the access is to helping teachers understand better what computer science is and empowering them to feel like they are computer scientists, so that they then in turn will teach their students computer science. So my project has been thinking about demystifying computer science to the everyday teacher and to encourage the integration of computer science into everything. So this idea of CS plus X, I don't know if at your university, if you have CS plus X types of courses, I'd be interested actually to know if you all are doing anything like that. But this whole idea that CS can be combined with anything and that it doesn't have to be its own silo discipline, and that a teacher can be empowered to integrate computer science into what they're doing in their classroom, whatever subject it may be, because computer science is everywhere, in everything, a part of everything. And there are so many ways in which students can access that information. So that has been my journey for the past 2 years, thinking about that. So as part of that journey, during CS Education Week, which is the first week in December, I did a couple of Twitter campaigns around CS plus X, and computer science is more than just coding, which is probably when you ask a teacher, what is computer science, that is probably the thing that they come to the most. And so I'm going to wrap up so that we can have our Q&A. So my next discovery is kind of shifting away from educators, but sort of still thinking about them, is still pursuing this idea of becoming my own boss and an entrepreneur, but thinking about using my talents of design thinking, creativity, and innovation, and applying that to helping other women of color make steps in their journeys, whether that be career or other passion-wise, to step into their visions. So that's my next little side project, along with continuing my work as an educator at the Harker School. And let's continue the conversation. Thank you for letting me share my story with all of you.
No, thank you. As Natasha said, that's awesome. So I'm going to open up the floor for our students. Who wants to go first? Yeah, Nathan, go ahead.
Hello. First, I just want to start with it's really nice to meet you, even if it's virtually. But can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the CS Plus program, where like you integrate computer science in other areas of education.
Yeah. So I know that there are I think it's Northwestern University and UC Berkeley, and
I think Stanford had started it as well, right?
I think so. There are a few universities that have started programs where they are interdisciplinary programs of combining computer science with another subject area. And so this idea that, that computer science can be a part of, well, definitely a part of science, right? There's a lot of data science and looking at big data. So computer science is integrated into that. You can combine computer science with music. A lot of students at the K-12 level love the idea of being able to code their own songs. There are several applications out there that allow you to, I think one is called Air Sketch, where you can learn Python and code your own music. Definitely computer science and art, right? There's a lot of that has to do with graphics and combining computer science with the artistic elements, whether that's the things you see that Pixar and Disney create, all of that stuff. Once kids learn that all the hair and the clothing and the movement is actually all generated with computer science before the artist then put the final touches on the various characters. They find that very interesting. There's medicine, right? A lot of the future of medicine has a lot to do with all the DNA sequencing and understanding the human body through that. Agriculture, just learned the other day that there are like actually these bots that that are in tractors. So for seeding and planting in fields and farms to make that a more efficient process. So it's literally everywhere.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next, anybody else?
I have a question.
Let's
Okay.
see, you hear me?
Yes.
I'll wait. Go ahead.
There was discussion, like Jim West, at the labs, there was discussion, even in your program you went through, about how to get students into science with music and sound, right? Because a lot of communities, that's a big draw, especially for minority communities. They like music and that kind of thing. So I was thinking that in the CS, right? Why you get performers, other artists, okay, to talk about the some of the, maybe address some technical challenges and delivering that kind of the thing they know about, right? The end product they know about. But I think that's something that might attract a lot of what do we call it? Not very well served communities, because they understand one part of it already. They just understand the technology part. And your thesis
Exactly.
is in that kind of that area too. So it deals with sound and soundification. So I was thinking about how did you think about trying to get performers or other people involved in what do you call it, making real the technology to these communities?
Yeah, I think that is definitely an untapped area. There's an organization called code.org. They developed this program called the Hour of Code that happens during CS Education Week every year. And they've extended beyond that, but they have a lot of videos where they try to get a diverse array of people to participate in their videos that the students will watch. And a couple of them have brought in actually some famous basketball players. I don't know them, but I'm sure the kids do, who have done coding in their life as part of when they went to high school. They weren't just all about ball. They were also about learning how to do computer science. And I think they've actually had will.i.am as part of one of the clips of some of the things they've done. So they've definitely expanded in that area. They also have, there's this dance troupe called Illuminate, who they do, it's like a light dance show. So they're all in black, but they have LED lights. And so all of that is programmed and through computer science. So I think that that is definitely something that is being utilized. I don't think it's a well-tapped source, but I think it's a source that is starting to be utilized. Yeah.
Thanks.
Natasha, you have a question?
I do. My first question is, as a young girl, what was your dream career and what did you get and what did you do to get there?
So I will say, as a very young person, I think I started off thinking that I wanted to be a nurse like my mom, and then I realized that blood and stuff was not nothing I wanted to deal with.
Yeah.
And then, as I said in the beginning, I was part of this summer science program that I started as a middle schooler. And that's where my interest in engineering and computer science developed and blossomed. And that program actually is something that I always think about in terms of all the advocacy work that I'm doing with CSTA. I always go back to that program because that was the program that really supported me and nurtured me to do all of the different things that I have done in terms of pursuing my computer science degree. That said, I always say, if I had grown up in this era where there's so many avenues of things to choose from, I would definitely be pursuing something more with design and art and computer science, because the art is something that I just love dearly, and would probably pursue something in that area. But a lot of the getting to your vision or your goal, I would say the key for me has just been finding mentorship. Finding the people that are your cheerleaders and your supporters, and the people who can help open some doors for you, because no movement forward is not without having some type of support. And case in point, my whole the CST Equities Fellow Program that they developed, part of it was about helping to amplify the voices of young leaders who didn't have a platform to share their thoughts around this problem of access to CS education. And so the past 2 years, I've probably done more presentations than I've done in my entire career in terms of access to the ways that teachers can provide access and equity in CS education. And that has just been through that program and the person who runs it amplifying our voices. A funny story. So Ariel asked me if she could post about the talk on Twitter, and I was like, yes. And so someone posted and I retweeted it. And then all of a sudden today in my Slack channel for my equity fellows, 2 hours before the talk, hey, Abigail's doing this talk. You guys can join here if you want to. And actually one of the fellows was in here for a brief moment supporting me. So that support really goes a long way, because that's the thing that's going to propel you to want to keep going, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have one more question.
Yeah.
You technically answered part of my third question with the support part. We all dealt with challenges. What was your challenge that made you almost want to quit? Or, well, yeah, I had to change my question because you kind of answered it. So what challenges that you faced that you was going to get to a point that you was going to quit, what you was going to do, you're going to give up? Or did you ever get to that point?
So my biggest challenge that I often thought about quitting and I didn't realize it was a challenge until my senior year in college, was that I had test taking. I have horrible test taking anxiety. Like, you would not believe, like, I would have had really great, awesome grades in my engineering classes in undergraduate if I didn't have such horrible test taking anxiety. And it wasn't until my senior year at Princeton that I went in for some help with the professor, and he was all, have you ever talked to anyone about test anxiety? And I was all like, I didn't know it was a thing. I didn't know it was something I could get help with, anything like that. And I would say that, when you go from, in my case, go from high school and being kind of at the top of your class and kind of just coasting. I think I just kind of coasted because I had that natural ability to coast, and going to an institution where you're with all the top 10% of their class and you get your first D and C, and you're just demoralized by I don't even know how to go on or what I'm gonna do. It was those times that I was often like, I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I'm supposed to be doing it. And those were the times where my fellowship with the National Society of Black Engineers really helped to keep me going. Because I had people that looked at me that were having similar struggles, and also the spaces to be supported in that. And when I got to grad school, I think I got to a point where I'm not even sure I want to be getting this degree, but I think just a little bit of the cheerleading of, yes, you can do it. Yes, you can make it happen. Really went a long way. And yeah, it's not all rosy. Many times I was like, why am I doing this? I have no idea. And then to finish 7 years of a PhD program and decide, oh, I want to go into education. It seems like not the path, but I think a lot of what I learned in my going through my career is that you just have to kind of walk your path in the moments, as opposed to the final destination, because the final destination can change. And if I didn't decide to just have this foray into the education realm, I will not have gained this platform to talk about access to CS education for other Black and Brown children, which I think is a very important thing to be working on, and actually takes me full circle to my journey, because that is exactly how I got interested in computer science, was just having that access, and being at the right place in the right time to have that access. So I would say, walk your journey, walk towards the vision, but don't be surprised if the vision takes you down on a different path.
I like that. Thank you so much. You are an inspiration.
Thank you.
And you're my people, Trini.
So I have a question for you, and it's about mentors and sponsors. Throughout your career, what role have mentors and sponsors had in the steps that you've taken along the career? And what's your basic philosophy or advice that you can share on how to utilize mentors and sponsors, and where do you find them?
Yeah. So I will say that I did not have a vision for going to grad school. That was not a thing I had a vision for. But during undergraduate, when I was interning at Bell Labs, I had one of the summers I worked in a lab with one employee, and met a second employee in that department, and did subsequent summers working with that one person. And that one person was fascinating to me. He was a concert pianist who had a degree from Juilliard, who fell in love with AI and artificial intelligence, and was actually going through a PhD program at the time at MIT with Marvin Minsky as his mentor. And he was the person who basically took me from undergraduate to grad school to actually, he served as part of my dissertation committee in college for my PhD. And he was the person that when I was like, I don't know if I can do this, he would say, yes, you can. Of course you can. And so that mentorship connection, although I kind of fell into it, was perfect. But not all of the connections that I made, I fell into. Like how I ended up actually in his department was one summer I was working in one department and we did a tour of this other department during my internship. And I made sure to email and connect with the person in that department because I was super interested in the things that they were doing. And that's how I ended up being able to do my internship in this other department or area. So I will say it's super important to find a mentor. How you go about doing that, I think, is going to things like this. And when you find a person that you feel like you resonate with, I would say don't be shy to follow up with them through a contact or an email, and just to see if you have questions for them or to develop that connection or contact, because that can be the start of a blossoming mentorship that you could develop and nurture over time. The other thing that I would say is really important, that has been important to my career as an educator, is developing your own kind of accountability circle, I'll call it. So I have developed some really strong, I joke with people that I call myself a groupie, because I love to find a group and a cohort and that I can meet with on a regular basis to have accountability and support. And that has been a very aspect. I think mentorship is great in terms of having people that you can count on to ask questions of. I think of mentorship as more as like asking the wise elder, well, what do you think of this, or getting your opinions. But having a cohort of peers that you can count on for accountability, to hold you accountable, people that understand what you're kind of going through, that has been definitely one of the stronger things that I have used to kind of get me over the humps that I encounter over time. And one more thing I'll say about mentorship is I went to this talk once, and it was about, I think it was about having or getting more diversity into tech and high tech and engineering. And one thing that someone said, it resonated with me, and I'll leave you with this, is that you need also, in finding mentors, it's good to have people that you identify with, but it also is good to have a person who can be an ally or a co-conspirator. So the mentor that got me through grad school, he was actually a white male. And the thing that this person said was, you need someone who has a seat at the table, who can pound the table for you. And that really resonated with me. The idea of, you might not have a seat at the table, but if you have connection with someone who does, and a really good connection, they'll be the person to kind of get you through the door. And that was super, super helpful, because I will say that my mentor at Bell Labs was a person who was integral in getting me. I got a 6-year fellowship from Bell Labs, Lucent, AT&T Lucent, for graduate school. And he was part of that process. Like when I went to have my interviews for the fellowship, everyone I interviewed with, I kind of knew, because he had already like introduced me to this person or that person. And so it was really comfortable having these series of conversations. So that's my advice.
Thank you. That was great.
Yeah, exactly. I think the students here should probably recognize that being visible is one of the key elements for people to know who you are and be that advocate later on, right? I think that's key.
Definitely.
Abigail, I was there when they made the decision to give you a fellowship. Okay, so right, but I would say so that you get firsthand information. It's 20 years later, you know. So
Right.
no, I mean, your mentor's review of you and your advocacy, which he shows, the reason why you got it, which is your correct assessment. Okay, and I just want to let you know firsthand, as a person at the table, that that was the case, and that's why it's very important for me to see what if we made the right decision, which I think we did in the first place. But yeah, so he did. You should call him up and tell him it made a difference. He knows that, but I think you should tell him you heard from somebody there. So
Yeah, I will definitely do that.
Other questions from the audience?
Hi, I had a question. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
You spoke about that currently you're working on educating educators. I was wondering what the format of these courses might be, like how frequently you're trying to interact with these teachers, and then like the length of the course. And then also if the courses are taught like after school or on weekends, or like at what time of the day, or like where do you find time for the teachers to do this learning as they're busy people?
Teachers are very busy. This is true. So part of my job is educating educators. So that is inherently in my current workspace. What I do as the director of learning, innovation, and design is I work with my teachers. So in the context of the school that I work in, that happens during lunch hours, on their off teaching hours. Sometimes that is an after school workshop that I do. And the programs of the pictures that I shared with you, a lot of those were summer institute programs. So for an educator, it would be like a 1-week program that they would attend during the summer to learn these things. I actually currently also am doing some work with our local university, San Jose State University, in their teacher education program to do a computer science seminar with pre-service and some of their teacher alumni to teach about computer science and computer science integration. And that's also during the summer, and that's like 6 weeks or a couple hours each week format for that. And sometimes they are day-long workshops that happen on the weekend as well. So that is when and how teachers get their professional learning, professional development, is usually during the summertime or during the weekend. Great question.
What language are you promoting when you're teaching CS? I know programming is not the only issue there, but is there one language that you're sort of focusing on?
No, mostly a lot of what we focus on is computational thinking.
Okay.
So we're thinking more in concepts rather than being language agnostic.
Mhm.
I will say at the K-12 level, a lot of the programming happens in Scratch, which is a visual-based language. Python seems to be the next forerunner in terms of what teachers are using in the middle high school arena of teaching programming. And then of course, if you're doing any type of AP computer science, it's Java, but that's for the, super advanced that are going to take APs in high school.
Okay. Anybody else? Sarah?
Yeah, I had a question. So, hello. I want to say, like, so far, thank you for the talk. It's been very inspiring. And I kind of want to ask, like, you kind of talked on this, like, kind of being really interested in computer science, but then also being really interested in, like, the arts and, like, that kind of aspect of stuff. So I kind of wanted to ask how you, like, balance that. So, like, you don't, like, get, like, too burnt out on, like, either side of, like, your interests.
Yeah. So as I said, when I was an undergraduate, I definitely knew that I needed some type of art outlet. And so every semester when I was selecting my courses, I chose some type of something that was related to art, whether it was art history or drawing class or a painting class. Or I don't know if I don't think I did photography in undergraduate, but maybe in high school, just to keep that balance going. And I know in terms of computer science now, computer graphics is like a large area unto itself with so many places that you can insert your nooks and crannies of your artistic work. And now as a teacher, what has been wonderful for me is that I'm now in this current position where I'm in charge of a makerspace. So I have access to a lot of cool tools to do creative things with. And part of my job is to integrate that creativity into what our teachers do in the classroom. So that helps me stay active with my artistic side, as well as my ideas for creating a business. A lot of that has to do with design and creativity. So I get a lot of joy out of working on those projects as well. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, Sarah is a junior in Lowell High School.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. So yes, you keep at the different, make sure you just integrate that into the classes that you choose to take, and continue cultivating those passions. What I did one year when I felt like I wasn't doing enough creative stuff, I wanted to explore Instagram because I hadn't gotten on that bandwagon yet. I gave myself a little challenge to do. I have an Instagram handle called Macro Concept, which I do like macro photography on my cell phone. And I did a year where I tried to do one macro concept picture a day for an entire year. And that kept me in my creative loop, at least for 1 year.
Yeah. I was going to say that it's pretty unique, that entrepreneurial idea you had about having a creative outlet for K-12 teachers to do things. So I'm wondering if that could be transitioned to university teachers as well, because I think many of us do need something like that. And that in some ways lets us, just step back and bring some of the things that people are interested in into their work realm.
That's a great idea, and a idea that I hadn't thought about, because I started to do this pivot into this next area of helping just kind of mid-career women of color figure out their next steps using creativity and innovation, because the K-12 education arena is, as Christopher pointed out, teachers are super busy. And so I wasn't able to engage educators into my space of what I was trying to do, but I didn't think about higher ed because I work in K-12, but
or could you have your K-12 administration carve out a space in the teacher's schedule to kind of do this and actually show the benefits of that as having an outlet, and
yeah.
that it pays in terms of better teaching and better engagement.
Yeah. Well, I hope that as we move into this next post COVID phase, that is something I'll get to do at my school, because when I came back to it in this current position, I had a year and a half of transitioning technology systems for our teachers. So we were very focused on that and haven't gotten to do a lot with our makerspace and creativity. But now that we're on the other side of that, and past COVID and more back in person, that's my hope, is to develop some teacher ambassadors for creativity and innovation in my school, which will in turn develop some seeds and ripples amongst our faculty and staff.
Sounds great. We'd be happy to explore that with you.
Wonderful.
Anybody else? Questions before we close? All right, Abigail, thank you very much.
You're very welcome. And thank you again for having me.
Thank you.
It was wonderful experience to go down memory lane and realize that sometimes you don't realize how much you've achieved until you've been forced to look at your journey. So thank you.
Thank you. Bye now.
Thank you, Dr.
Take
Joseph.
care, everyone. Yes.
Have a
And
good one.
Ariel has, I'll put in the chat my email again and Twitter handle, just in case anyone wants to contact me.
Yes.
There you have it. Thank
That's
you.
also your Instagram handle as well, right?
Yes, that is also an Instagram handle as well. Instagram, Facebook,
Twitter.
Twitter. I think you can find me all those 3 places. But you should all use LinkedIn. I didn't mention that before.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
LinkedIn.
That's right.
Yeah, join the network.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you very much. Have
You're
a good
welcome.
evening.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.